I suppose we should cast our eye looking back, but also looking slightly forwards to the wonderful world of the pandemic. From your point of view, the pandemic's obviously been fundamental in terms of changing personal lives, but from a company's point of view, how, in your opinion, has the risk landscape changed with the pandemic?
Yeah, I think there are things that we're all experiencing, aren't we? For example, when you contact customer services, and you're very conscious when you're talking to the person on the end of the phone that they're working from their kitchen table. They've quite possibly got their kids in the background trying to homeschool them as well. All those challenges that we're all going through at the moment, and that in itself, I guess, kind of brings security challenges. The ones that have probably been most visible, I think, over since really the beginning of the pandemic, there's definitely been a spike in phishing and ransomware attacks, really, piggybacking off of the back of the whole sort of COVID-19 fear that, looking to impersonate brands and really making, really aiming to sort of mislead employees and customers. Who certainly seen a lot of that. We've got a much more complex network environment now with a lot more assets connecting to network, potentially remotely, whether through the VPN or into a cloud environment. So it's a challenge. I mean, Simon, you mentioned you're responsible for the IT and the security at Infinigate. I mean, I'm presuming you've seen some of these challenges yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've almost become a network administrator for 40 or 50 individual networks. So everybody who now works remotely, the first initial push was really about making sure we could just do it, and having people just online being available to do their job. The people wanting to work, we need to make sure the technology was there. That was the first reaction, and then the kind of the second step is looking at how we maintain that process, how I'm able to evaluate the risk that's occurring across 40 different networks of all the employees in the company, and also being able to manage that as well. I think finding stuff inside a network or within the cloud, which you've got control over, is quite easily, but the risk landscape is just exponentially grown now that we've got everybody kind of working remotely.
Yeah, I think even just having visibility of what's on your network can be a bit of a challenge, can't it? And there's that. I think the other things that we're seeing as well is challenges around staff being off sick as well. Within the cybersecurity teams, resources, critical resources within cybersecurity, being off sick and making sure that that they're still able to cover what they're doing. I think we've also seen customers over the last few months. We've definitely seen a switch. Actually, it's interesting that we're talking about managed services. We've seen a switch to more customers looking to outsource. So there's definitely been a big move towards the cloud, but also really looking to outsource to give them that scale to cover for when perhaps they've got staff sickness or staff turnover, and really just sort of pushing that expertise onto an area where they just know that they've got it covered, they know they've got it safe, so they can deal with the other challenges that have really come as a result of the impact the pandemic's having on the cybersecurity posture.
I agree. I was going to say, I think that there's almost been two pulls away from the traditional in-house approach. This explosion into the cloud, which people are naturally starting to do with services, as well as the having to work from home, the pandemic side of things. And from my point of view, just the visibility, the areas that I need to cover, and the risks from vulnerability growing so quickly, it's almost hard to keep up. And with people being off sick or not being able to come into the office, having cloud solutions gives me a much better chance of being able to at least stand the chance of being able to see if there are problems on people's machines or on the network as it perhaps wouldn't be normally for me. I suppose just carrying on from that part of the conversation, one of the other questions I kind of wanted to ask you today, I mean, from your from what you're seeing when you're talking to your customers and when you're discussing things with them, are you seeing companies across the country looking to downsize? We talked about the stretched nature previously, but as people are moving into the cloud, do you think companies are really starting to be very specific about the people they're using for it? Or how do you see it at the moment?
We're certainly seeing a difference in terms of how our customers are deploying the resources that they've got. On the security side of things, we haven't really seen any downsizing. I mean, quite frankly, if anything, I think the challenge has been having enough staff rather than downsizing as such. Clearly, there are organisations that are impacted for commercial reasons by the pandemic, and that's a different story. But in terms of the organisation's structure and within the security teams, we're not necessarily seeing downsizing. We're seeing organisations try and do more with what they've got, because as the security landscape becomes increasingly complex, the challenges that the teams are dealing with are stretching the teams more and more.
And again, like I said, prior to this chat, I was having a look on the website, and with the expert ops, you talked about it as well, not necessarily having the right expertise or enough staff. In the expert ops, you actually have the options to support somebody like me, for example, who, if I was using your solution and something happened and I didn't really understand, you would have the expertise there to help me to walk through the remediation or the understanding of what the vulnerability may be.
Absolutely, yeah. We've got several levels of service which include doing just that, actually. And I think one of the other benefits that we're seeing or we're being told by our customers actually as they're moving across, is we're talking to people who are typically very experienced, very knowledgeable, and very expert in what they do, but they may not be seeing the scenarios day in, day out that our team are. Our team are used to managing the Tripwire services, therefore they're able to do a lot more with less, in addition to having the scale as a managed service to be able to scale with additional people as and when necessary, which of course is an individual organisation. No matter what size you are, whether you're a small, medium, or even a large enterprise, we're just not necessarily set up to scale when a large incident arises, or even for that matter, in advance of an audit. You have a consistent.
I don't like that. That's a dirty word. Don't say that.
Throughout the year, and just prior to an audit, we see it time and time again where you see organisations who take staff who are doing very important other jobs, who are then really sort of thrown at solving this problem that comes around to make sure that as an organisation you're in a position where you're compliant in advance of an audit. So there are a couple of things we do here. One is actually as a result of our tools anyway, we look to avoid, what we call compliance drift, which is, a pattern you typically see in organisations where there's this big panic before an audit. Make sure that everything is in a great compliance state, hopefully, or at least nearly there. And then over time, everyone sort of relaxes and goes back to their day jobs. So within the tool itself, what we're able to do is actually notify any deviation from your known compliance state, and so you can keep abreast of to what extent that drift is happening, so that you can sort of remediate it as and when it happens, or when you want to, rather than having that huge panic in advance of the audit. And then secondly, obviously, by moving across to a managed service model, it clearly gives the organisations the ability to have that scale from within Tripwire, giving you the support that you need, rather than necessarily just having to throw every single resource you can in advance of the audit.
Yes, I've never had to do that before, ever. No, I think again, it's the same principle. We've been able to do more with less. Just having some structure to what I'm trying to achieve. Certainly for an audit. I mean, an audit is in itself a very good snapshot of where I am within my environment. And I don't think I've ever passed an audit the first time. There's always something that comes up for me. But having the support, being able to say, well, these are the areas, these are the things that need to be attended to. This is of concern. These are really important things for me, just to be able to pick them out and I can focus my attention. So generally, the other things that do get picked up, I have to make the auditors really look to find something wrong with what I'm trying to get audited. So that's really useful from my point of view.